Hi, almost everyone is watching my channel without a subscription. Please support me and subscribe. I release videos every day for you. Story 1. In the dream, my boyfriend told me how much he hated me after that. I need to preface this by saying that when my boyfriend is awake, he is wonderful and I couldn't be happier. We laugh and joke all day, and spending time with him in general is truly a joy. Yes, I mean this. No, he doesn't upset me at all when he's awake. Also, for some background, he works night shifts at a job he really hates, so when he comes home, he likes to just relax and unwind, usually with whiskey or beer. Typically, we cuddle, or I massage his back and legs until he's drunk enough to fall asleep. He doesn't need alcohol to fall asleep. I worded this wrong. He can fall asleep fine without it. I just meant that the alcohol makes him fall asleep quicker than usual. I have insomnia, so I usually end up staying awake for a while after he falls asleep. I'm also really sensitive to aggressive tone of voice due to some past trauma. He only really talks in his sleep if I shift too quickly or try to move him over a little bit, if I have no room on the bed, or if I move the blanket too much and it disturbs him. He usually snaps at me saying, "Quit fucking moving," or "Can you please fucking stop," or "Oh my fucking god." Just things in general that give off an indication that he's really annoyed with me. There's also been a couple unprompted times where he's stirred or rolled over, I guess disturbing his own sleep, and said things like, "I can do better than this," etc. Because of my sensitivity, I usually end up crying over these things. I try to make it a point not to bring up the things he says/does in his sleep, unless they're funny, which sometimes happens, because for one, I really don't think he can control it, and two, when I have brought up things he said, he always ends up feeling horribly guilty for the things he says, and that makes me feel guilty for saying anything. Last night in his sleep, he ripped my blanket away from me. We sleep with separate blankets because this has been an issue in the past, and tucked it under himself and his own blanket. It was really cold in the room, so I tried to take it back, but he grabbed my hand and shoved it away. I didn't want to have to wake him up, but he's a lot stronger than me, and no matter what I tried to do, I just couldn't get the blanket back. I shook him gently and kept saying, "Baby, can you please give me back my blanket?" I was met with sleepy grunts, but he still wouldn't give it back. Finally, after a little persistence, he sat up really quickly and yelled, "What you want? Jesus, you are annoying." I said, "I just want my blanket back, please." He shoved it towards me and nearly knocked me off the bed, and then instantly laid back down and started snoring. I didn't sleep at all last night because of this. It's really eating in me. I really don't want to be annoying to him, especially when he's trying to rest after work. But I also don't know how I can keep putting up with this. Part of me wonders if he actually means any of the things he says. When he woke up this morning, I couldn't bring myself to say anything about it, but I also couldn't look him in the eye. I guess my question in this is, am I being too sensitive? Should I bring this up to him? I don't know how much that would accomplish because he usually has no recollection of it and doesn't know how to control it. What can I do to keep my sensitivity from affecting our relationship and the way I see him/myself? First, I'd like to address the comments accusing my boyfriend of being an alcoholic, being abusive, accusing me of lying about how happy I am in the relationship, or claiming he wasn't actually asleep during this and wanted an excuse to abuse me. Y'all are, and really I cannot stress this enough, fucking crazy. What a leap. He functions just fine without alcohol, and I've seen him go weeks without it. He doesn't need alcohol to fall asleep. He drinks after work because that's how he likes to unwind. The same as one might go to a bar on the weekend. And for those of you with anecdotes about how your partners started off like this before leading into full-on abuse, I am deeply sorry that you endured that, and I wish healing on all of you. But that's not what this is. I've known my boyfriend for 10 years. He doesn't have an abusive bone in his body. On to the update. Shortly after I made this post, I asked him if he thought I was annoying. He said of course not, and asked me what prompted the question. When I brought up what he did in his sleep, he got very quiet for a short while, and then asked, "Why didn't you slap the shit out of me?" Which made me chuckle quite a bit. He then went on to say that he would prefer I tell him about the things he says in his sleep, stressing that if he crosses a line like that ever again, I have full permission to smack the life out of him. I never would. I asked him if it was a possibility that the alcohol was making his sleep more restless, and he said maybe, I don't know. I then asked him if it would be a possibility to try going a couple nights without alcohol, and he agreed. Since then, our co-sleeping has been wonderful, restful, and peaceful, except for the night before last. He shook me awake while I was sleeping, and I asked him what was up. Baby, I'll show you." I had no idea what he was talking about, so I asked him. He said, "I'll show you." I said, "Baby, are you still asleep?" "Yeah, I'll show you." He instantly started snoring again. I must have giggled myself back to sleep. Anyways, I went to thank everyone for the kind advice, and we decided to cut alcohol out before bed as it seemed to help immensely. Bless. Update. Hi, it's me again. Going back and reading these posts was insanely difficult. I want to kick myself for how deep in denial I was. Everyone in the comments was telling me that my boyfriend is an alcoholic, and I fought so hard against that. But it was true. A few months after my last post, I had an epiphany moment. It was 3 a.m. and he was drunk. He begged me to make him a pot of spaghetti because he liked the way I cooked it. I asked him if he would strain the pot for me, because the pot we had didn't have thermal safe handles, or whatever they're called, and I often would burn myself trying to do it on my own. He grumbled for a bit and said fine, but after less than 5 minutes, he said he was going to hang out in our bedroom. I begged him not to, because he would fall asleep, and trying to wake him when he falls asleep drunk often became a nightmare of verbal abuse. He insisted he wouldn't fall asleep, but lo and behold, he did. I thought to myself, great. Now I'd hate to choose between burning my hands or being berated until I cry, all over a pot of fucking spaghetti. I chose to burn my hands. I angrily made myself a plate and put the rest in a Tupperware, and reality hit. I'm just like my mom. My mom has been with an alcoholic for 13 years. He is awful to her in so many ways, but she puts up with it because A, she feels like she can't do any better, and B, she believes it's her duty as a wife to just deal with it quietly, and I was falling down the same path. I thought that if I could just grin and bear it, he'd see how much I love him and how much I do for him, and realize that he needs to put in the same effort. Boy howdy was I fucking wrong. I took off to a friend's house for the night, and he panicked when he woke up in the morning and I wasn't there. He called me, crying, begging me to return. I unleashed all my feelings in return, and in more words, told him that I didn't have much of an incentive to return, and how could I know that he'd do better? His tears turned to anger, and he screamed down the phone. It was terrifying. I ended up going back home to collect some things, and told him that I needed to separate from him, because I didn't know how to help him anymore, and as deeply as I loved him, I couldn't stay and watch him kill himself any longer. I'll never forget the look he gave me. It was like I had kicked him in the stomach. I stayed with my friend for a month or so, with little to no contact with him. I ended up having to return to collect the rest of my stuff, and I noticed something strange. He had always been kind of a slob, leaving empty beer and liquor bottles on the floor beside his bed, but when I returned, by the side of his bed were only tea, soda, and water bottles. His face was less sunken, and he didn't smell like beer at all. When he went to the bathroom, I took a sneak peek in his garbage can just to be sure. It was full, but there were no signs of anything alcoholic. He caught me peeking and asked what I was doing. He then told me that he hadn't touched alcohol since the day I left. I was shocked. We ended up sitting and talking for a while. He said being sober was hard, and he had the shakes all the time, and he missed me. I missed him too. I've been infatuated with him since I was 13. Those feelings weren't going away anytime soon. To wrap things up for the sake of character count, we ended up getting back together. He celebrates 2 years of sobriety this week. I'm so proud of him. He sleeps restfully now, with the exception of a mumble here or there in his sleep, and is no longer mean to me in any facet. Also, we're engaged now. Thanks for reading. I'm sorry I fought you guys so hard, and thank you for telling me the truth even though I wasn't ready to hear it. Story 2. Tie View. By telling my parents I was gay to avoid their arranged marriage proposals. So I'm pretty straight, maybe slightly bi if we count femboys. Let's get that out of the way first. I'm also an Indian American male around 26 years of age. I'd also like to clear up some misconceptions around arranged marriage. A lot of non-Indians seem to think it's literally your parents choose who you marry, and that's that, but that's not really the case. Instead, it's more like your parents tap their network to find potential partners for you. If you like each other's picks, then you guys meet in person, and then you decide whether or not you want to get married. So basically, your parents are Tinder, and you get a meeting or two to decide whether or not you want to get married. It's not quite as bad as many of you think it is, but the whole process feels super rushed, and I'd rather date someone before I figure out if we're compatible or not. Anyways, my parents have recently been getting on my case about getting married. Apparently, I'm getting older, need to settle down and give them grandchildren or something like that. Basically, every time I see them, which is fairly often since they live close by, they have a new potential match for me, a picture of some new girl, and ask me if I'd be willing to meet her. It's honestly super annoying, but I'm too non-confrontational to really put my foot down and say, I don't want an arranged marriage. After all, if I do, there'd be an argument or at minimum some interrogation about why I don't want one. Anyways, I was thinking of ways I could get them to stop harassing me about getting married, and the idea in the title popped up in my head. I decided it'd be a lot easier to just come out as gay then, to explain why I didn't want an arranged marriage. My parents were fairly conservative, but weren't the types to disown their kids, and if I just said I was gay, I'd have a solid reason to not get an arranged marriage. I didn't like girls. So that's what I ended up doing last time I was visiting. They were showing me pictures of some girl, and I just looked them in the eyes and said, "Mom, Dad, I'm gay." They got really quiet and awkward and asked me if I was sure, and I said yes. My mom told me they'd love me no matter what and to do what makes me happy. My dad was a lot more awkward and quiet, but later gave me a similar talk about how he was a bit uncomfortable with the idea, but recognizes that times are changing and I should do what makes me happy. Overall, I did feel kind of bad because of how genuinely my parents seemed to respond to me, but was happy with the result. They stopped giving me arranged marriage proposals and stopped showing me pictures of girls. That is until last weekend. I visited them as usual and was greeted by my mom, who was more excited than usual. She sat me down and pulled out a binder with a bunch of pictures of guys. Apparently my parents had spent the last month or so looking for any and all one-eye Hindu Indian men who I could potentially marry. So now I guess I'm dealing with the exact same want, but instead of being greeted with pictures of cute Indian girls, I get to see pictures of one-eye Indian wonders instead. For one, my life law. At this point, the plan is to either find a girlfriend and tell my parents she totally turned me straight, or maybe marry a twink or some Mick. TLDR. Told my parents I was one eye so they would stop pestering me with arranged marriage matches, start potential gay suitors instead. Update. Anyways, I have an update for you guys. I read all the comments on the original post from the people telling me to just tell my parents, questioning whether or not I was really straight, laughing at the admittedly fairly funny situation I'd gotten myself into, and a couple of people who were straight up mean. At the end of the day, though, posting here probably gave me the final push to do something. The weekend after I'd made the post, I visited my parents as always and resolved myself to tell them the truth. However, when I got there, my mom as always pushed the binder in my hands, and I kinda lost my resolve to tell her. I decided to just play along. It was then that I remembered the people on this thread who made fun of me for liking femboys and questioned whether or not I was really straight. I kinda took that to heart and decided to look at the binder of dudes in earnest to see if I liked any of them. I'm really glad I did. Most of the dudes were unattractive as expected, but I found a dude on there who I legitimately think is cuter and more feminine than the vast majority of girls I've seen. I told my mom I liked him, and she kinda joked around asking me what the point of being gay is when I wanted a dude who looked like a girl anyways. She talked to his parents. We had a meeting set up over Zoom, and overall it went really well. Me and him have a bunch of common interests. We're both massive weebs and history nerds, and he also disclosed that he apparently cross-dressed in private, which only made me like him more. In the end, though, we both decided we didn't want to rush into marriage and wanted to do a dating trial run of sorts. I told my parents, and they were fine with it. My dad literally just told me that as long as we have marriage as an eventual goal and don't have sex before marriage, they didn't mind if we dated. Literally, this whole shit show could have been avoided foul, though I'm kinda glad it wasn't. Luckily, he lived in the same state as me, but he was still a 3 to 4 hour drive away. So mostly we just had Discord calls and spent time together gaming for the past few weeks. This Saturday, though, we finally managed to meet up in person and have a date, and honestly I think I'm kinda in love. Dude's cuter than any girl I've ever met, but unlike most girls, he's actually into the same things I am. Anyways, we ended up having a great day out on Saturday, and I ended up staying at his place over the weekend. Though surprisingly, I kept my promise to my dad and somehow avoided having sex lol. Anyways, I'm now back home and extremely happy with my decision to lie to my parents. Then again, is it really lying if it turned out to be true? I really do like him and will probably ask him to marry me a couple months from now if nothing goes wrong. Story 3. My 24F boyfriend, 25M, had a bizarre reaction upon meeting my sister, 23F. Neither of them will tell me what's going on, and it's driving me crazy. I'll get right to it. BF and I have been together for almost a year now, and our relationship has been great so far. He's my dream guy, and I honestly couldn't ask for someone better. I always felt that we were both honest and trusted each other. At no point in our relationship did I sense that he was being unfaithful or doing something he shouldn't. Last week, he came over to have dinner with my family. My parents know him well and adore him. However, it was the first time he met my sister, or so I thought. For the record, I don't have a great relationship with her at all. She's manipulative, aggressive, and batshit crazy, to put it mildly. The only time she contacts me is when she either needs 1, money, or 3. I hope to get her out of trouble once again. I don't have a clue what's going on in her life most of the time and prefer it that way. Anyway, after dinner, BF and I were in one of the guest bedrooms when my sister walked in. She arrived late as usual. As soon as he noticed her, his whole demeanor changed. He looked surprised but then very annoyed. It was obvious he was trying to act indifferent, but it wasn't working at all because he absolutely lost focus of what he was doing. My sister's reaction was also weird. She immediately said, "Oh hey," in this fake innocent voice and started giggling. She had this huge fucking grin on her face and asked me where I found him. They awkwardly exchanged greetings and then she left the kitchen again. Of course, I asked him what just happened, like, do you know her or something? He vaguely said that she seems familiar and kept beating around the bush. I asked if they had sex and he immediately assured me that they definitely did not hook up and that I shouldn't worry. Later that evening, I asked her in private if they met before and did something I should know about. She wasn't being serious at all and kept telling me not to worry and all that BS. However, she swore they never hooked up and I actually believed her for once. If they did have sex, she'd definitely rub it in my face. I asked her if she owes him money or something and she said no. Side note. As we were about to leave later in the evening, BF said that he forgot his wallet and needed to go back inside. At the time I didn't realize, but now I'm almost sure he went to talk to her. For whatever reason. It's really frustrating being in this situation, and I can't stop thinking about it. I brought it up several times and he just keeps changing the topic or telling me that nothing happened. Doesn't that sound crazy suspicious? I don't want this to affect our relationship, but I feel like I don't even know him anymore. I'm tired of begging for explanation at this point. Should I have a serious discussion with him or just give up and move on? Update. I had no idea that my post blew up the way it did. Had it not been for the hundreds of "where's the update" / what happened? Comments and DMs, I probably would deleted the account and moved on. I don't have a main. Anyway, on the day I made the post, I calmly just asked him to tell me what happened. I told him that it can't be that bad and that we can work through whatever it is. He said that he can't because I'd think less of him and all that stuff. I was very hurt by that comment and didn't push it any further. The next day, I had a massive argument with my sister who said that he never actually paid her off. I had a feeling she was lying anyway. She decided to tell me what happened because she got bored, yes, really, and wanted me to leave her alone again. In a nutshell, this is what she told me. Around 2 years ago, she went to these weird, fucked up parties, clubs, that were filled with people from wealthy / professional backgrounds, and everyone was constantly coked up. Basically, lots of debauchery and excess. She saw my BF on several occasions and said that he was always doing heavy substances and acting very, very wild. Apparently, he and his buddies were major assholes too. I'm not sure how she ended up there, but he comes from a wealthy family, so the connection makes sense. One day he invited her to one of the rooms where he was smoking weed. She said that they got high together but never hooked up. Afterwards, she left the party with him and a few others and they went to someone's place. She walked in on my BF having a threesome with a couple of girls who tied into the bed and pegs / used toys on him amongst other things. She spent 5 minutes explaining how loud he was and that he asked her to hold his hand. Someone called the cops to the location and everyone, including my sister, took off without untying him, so he was stuck there. She says she never saw him again after that night. Long story short, I brought it up with my BF. He eventually admitted that she told the truth. I was more concerned about his substance abuse and said I'd be willing to discuss that if he's comfortable with it. It was a sensitive topic, but I think we dealt with it well. He's clean now and said that he managed to put a stop to it before it spiraled out of control. I assured him that his mental / physical health is far more important, the rest is just whatever. He was pretty relieved. He said that he's actually open about his past issues, but didn't feel like he could tell me. I think many people did something in the past they're not proud of, and it's not always easy to share that with someone you care about. However, it's definitely not something I expected because he's a clean-cut guy and just very calm / quiet overall. Afterwards, I asked him about that incident, and he was mortified. He said that my sister just laughed in his face and didn't even try to help, so the cops had to untie him, and he had to go ER that night as well. He was incredibly embarrassed about the butt play stuff and the hand-holding. It's the first time I've seen him so red-faced. I definitely could have handled the situation better from the start and regret that I was so pushy. Maybe if I didn't freak out, he'd feel more comfortable telling me. Just to finish off this post, I'm gonna say this. If you're facing a serious problem or addiction of any kind, please make sure you get help. The people that matter won't judge you and you'll feel less alone. Do not forget to subscribe and leave comments. Videos are released every day.